Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. Leon ran a hand through his disheveled dark hair, exhaling slowly. 4 years of college, countless all-nighters, and a mountain of student debt. All for what? To end up here competing for scraps in the worst job market in decades. He'd lost count of how many applications he'd submitted over the past 6 months. Each rejection email chipped away at his dwindling self-confidence. His parents' concerned voices echoed in his mind.
Maybe you should have studied something more practical.
The monotonous voice of the receptionist droned on, calling number after number. Lion glanced down at the crumpled ticket in his hand, still 15 people ahead of him. He leaned back, closing his eyes. His mind drifted to his college graduation just months earlier. The sun had shone brightly that day as he'd stood proudly in his cap and gown, diploma in hand. The future had seemed so full of promise then. How quickly things had changed. Number 47! Leon's eyes snapped open. That was him. He stood, smoothing out his wrinkled dress shirt, and made his way to the counter. The tired-looking woman behind the glass barely glanced up as she took his paperwork. "Any luck since your last visit?" she asked, her tone devoid of genuine interest. "Not yet," Leon admitted. "But I'm still trying," she nodded absently, typing something into her computer. "Well, keep at it. Your benefits have been extended for another month. Next!" Leon stepped aside, allowing the next person in line to approach. Another month of scraping by on unemployment checks. Another month of feeling like a failure. As he pushed through the heavy glass doors into the crisp air, Leon's phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably another automated rejection, he thought bitterly. But when he fished out the device and glanced at the screen, his heart skipped a beat. "Interview request, Horizon Publishing," the subject line read. Leon's fingers trembled slightly as he opened the email. It was brief and to the point. They wanted to meet him tomorrow morning to discuss an entry-level clerical position. It wasn't much, but it was something. A glimmer of hope in the endless sea of disappointment. That night, Leon meticulously ironed his only suit, shined his scuffed dress shoes, and rehearsed potential interview questions in front of the mirror. As he climbed into bed, a mixture of excitement and anxiety churned in his stomach. Tomorrow could change everything. The Horizon Publishing building loomed before him, all gleaming glass and polished steel. Leon took a deep breath, straightened his tie, and pushed through the revolving door into the sleek lobby. "I'm here to see Miss Kinsley," he told the receptionist, proud that his voice didn't waver. "I have an interview at 10 a.m., the woman nodded, handing him a visitor's badge. 11th floor. Good luck." The elevator ride seemed to take an eternity. Leon's palms grew sweaty as he watched the numbers tick upward. When the doors finally slid open, he stepped out into a bustling office space. A tall woman with sharp features and immaculately styled silver hair approached him. "Mr. Chen, I'm Evelyn Kinsley. Please follow me." Leon trailed behind her, acutely aware of the curious glances from nearby employees. Miss Kinsley led him to a spacious corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Have a seat," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her imposing desk. "So, tell me about yourself, Mr. Chen." Leon launched into his carefully prepared spiel, highlighting his academic achievements and internship experience. Miss Kinsley listened attentively, her expression unreadable. "I'll be frank with you," she said when he'd finished. "We've had to make some difficult decisions lately due to the economic downturn. This position opened up because we had to let someone go. It's entry level, but there's potential for growth if you prove yourself." Leon nodded eagerly.
"I'm a hard worker, Miss Kinsley. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to succeed here."
A ghost of a smile flickered across her face. "That's good to hear, because I'll be honest, things are tough right now. We're all having to wear multiple hats and go above and beyond. Can you handle that kind of pressure?"
"Absolutely.
Leon assured her, silently praying she couldn't hear how fast his heart was racing. Miss Kinsley studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, Mr. Chen, we'll start you on a 3-month probationary period. If all goes well, we'll revisit your status then. Can you start on Monday? Leon could hardly believe his ears. Yes, of course. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Miss Kinsley. I won't let you down. As he left the building, Leon felt like he was walking on air. He'd done it. He had a job. Things were finally looking up. The next few months passed in a blur of new experiences and challenges. Leon threw himself into his work, determined to prove his worth. He arrived early each day, stayed late, and volunteered for every task he could. His colleagues were friendly enough, if a bit distant. Everyone seemed on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And drop it did. 3 months to the day after Leon started, Miss Kinsley called an all-hands meeting. The atmosphere in the conference room was tense as she delivered the news. Another round of layoffs was coming. I wish I had better news, she said, her usual commanding presence tinged with genuine regret. But the reality is, we need to cut costs to stay afloat. We'll be reducing our workforce by 15% over the next 2 weeks. Your department heads will speak with those affected individually. Leon's stomach plummeted. He was the newest hire, the least experienced. Surely he'd be first on the chopping block. As he returned to his desk, his mind raced. What would he do? How would he face his parents? The thought of returning to that dreary unemployment office made him feel physically ill. The next week was excruciating. Every time a manager approached someone's desk, conversations would halt, and all eyes would follow them. One by one, Leon's co-workers disappeared into conference rooms, emerging with shell-shocked expressions and cardboard boxes. When Miss Kinsley's assistant finally appeared at his cubicle, Leon's heart sank. This was it. Miss Kinsley would like to see you, the assistant said, her face betraying nothing. Leon nodded numbly, following her to the familiar corner office. Miss Kinsley sat behind her desk, a stack of papers in front of her. Please sit down, Mr. Chen, she said, gesturing to the chair. Leon perched on the edge of the seat, bracing himself for the blow. To his surprise, Miss Kinsley smiled. Relax, Leon. You're not being let go. He blinked, hardly daring to believe it. I'm not... No, in fact, I have a rather unusual proposition for you. She leaned forward, folding her hands on the desk. How would you feel about a promotion? Leon's mind reeled. A promotion? But I thought, with the layoffs... The layoffs are unfortunate, but necessary, Miss Kinsley said. However, we still need to fill certain positions. And you've impressed me, Leon. Your work ethic is exemplary, and you've shown a real aptitude for editing. Thank you, Leon said, still struggling to process what was happening. What kind of promotion are we talking about? Miss Kinsley's expression grew serious. Assistant editor. It's a significant step up in both responsibility and pay, but there's a catch. Leon's elation dimmed slightly. What kind of catch? She sighed, leaning back in her chair. We're under increasing pressure from the government to meet certain diversity quotas. Specifically, we need to increase the number of women in leadership positions. Leon frowned, not sure where this was going. Okay. I'm going to be blunt, Leon. I want to promote you to this position, but to do so, I need you to present as female. The words hung in the air between them. Leon stared at her, certain he must have misheard. I'm sorry. What? Miss Kinsley held up a hand. I know how it sounds, but hear me out. This isn't just about checking boxes for the government. I truly believe you're the best person for this job. But my hands are tied when it comes to these regulations, so I'm offering you a choice. Leon's mind raced, trying to make sense of what she was proposing. You want me to pretend to be a woman? For how long? Not pretend, Leon. Become. At least while you're at work. And for the foreseeable future, I'm afraid. We can revisit the situation down the line, but for now it would need to be a full commitment. Leon sat back, stunned. The rational part of his brain screamed that this was insane. that he should walk out right now. But another part, the part that remembered the soul-crushing desperation of unemployment, that thought of his mountain of student debt, whispered that maybe, just maybe, it was worth considering.
I don't even know where I'd begin,
he said weakly. Miss Kinsley nodded sympathetically. I understand this is a lot to take in. We would provide resources, of course. A stylist, a voice coach, whatever you need to make the transition convincing, and your salary would reflect the unique nature of the position. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. Leon's eyes widened as he saw the figure written there. It was more than double what he was currently making.
Take some time to think it over, Miss Kinsley said, but I'll need your decision by the end of the week. And Leon, this conversation stays between us, regardless of what you decide.
Leon nodded mutely, his mind still reeling as he left her office. The rest of the day passed in a daze. He went through the motions of his work, but his thoughts kept circling back to Miss Kinsley's bizarre offer. That night he tossed and turned, weighing his options. On one hand, the idea of essentially living a double life terrified him. What would his family say? His friends? How would he explain such a drastic change? And what if he was found out? But on the other hand, the money. The opportunity for advancement. The chance to prove himself in a role he genuinely wanted. And hadn't he always been curious about what it might be like to experience life from a different perspective? As the week wore on, Leon found himself leaning more and more towards accepting. The alternative, likely unemployment to this unstable economy, seemed far worse than the challenges of this unconventional arrangement. When Friday arrived, Leon took a deep breath and knocked on Miss Kinsley's door. "Come in," she called. Leon entered, his heart pounding. Miss Kinsley looked up from her computer, eyebrows raised in silent question.
"I'll do it,"
Leon said, his voice barely above a whisper. Miss Kinsley nodded, a hint of approval in her eyes.
"I had a feeling you might. Take a seat, Leon. We have a lot to discuss."
Over the next hour, they hashed out the details of his transformation. He would take a 2-week vacation to undergo a crash course in femininity, everything from makeup and fashion to voice training and etiquette. When he returned, he would be introduced to the staff as Ramona Chen, a new hire from the company's West Coast office. "Are you sure about this?" Miss Kinsley asked as their meeting drew to a close. "Once we set this in motion, there's no going back, at least not for a while." Leon took a deep breath, then nodded. "I'm sure. I want this opportunity, Miss Kinsley. I'll do whatever it takes to succeed here." She smiled, extending her hand. "Then welcome aboard, Ramona. I have a feeling you're going to do great things here." The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Leon was whisked from one appointment to another, his head spinning with new information. He learned to walk in heels, to apply makeup, to style his growing hair, supplemented by expertly crafted extensions. A voice coach worked tirelessly with him to soften his speech patterns and raise his pitch to a more feminine register. As the days passed, Leon found himself becoming increasingly fascinated by his transformation. He'd always considered himself open-minded, but he'd never imagined he'd find such enjoyment in exploring this new identity. There was something oddly freeing about shedding his old self and stepping into Ramona's shoes, literally and figuratively. The night before his scheduled return to work, Ramona, she corrected herself, stood before the full-length mirror in her new apartment, part of the relocation story to explain her sudden appearance. The person staring back at her was both familiar and startlingly foreign. Ramona's hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, framing a face subtly reshaped by expert contouring. Her eyes, enhanced by mascara and eyeliner, seemed larger and more expressive. A tailored blazer and pencil skirt hugged curves that hadn't existed 2 weeks ago, created through a combination of shapewear and strategic padding. "You can do this," she whispered to her reflection, practicing her new, higher voice. "You are Ramona Chen, and you're going to be amazing!" The next morning, Ramona's heels clicked confidently against the lobby's marble floor as she made her way to the elevators. She nodded politely to the security guard, relieved when he showed no sign of recognizing her. As the elevator doors opened on the 11th floor, Ramona took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. Showtime. Miss Kinsley was waiting for her, a rare smile on her face. "Ramona, welcome. You look wonderful. Are you ready to meet the team?" Ramona nodded, smoothing her skirt nervously. "As ready as I'll ever be." They made their way through the office, Miss Kinsley introducing Ramona to her new colleagues. To her immense relief, no one showed any sign of connecting her to Leon. A few of the men even gave her appreciative glances, which sent a confusing mix of emotions through her. As the day wore on, Ramona found herself settling into her new role with surprising ease. The work itself was familiar. She'd been doing much of it as Leanne, after all, but the dynamics of the office felt subtly different. She noticed her male colleagues were more likely to hold doors for her or offer to grab her coffee. Her female coworkers were more inclined to chat with her about personal matters. Weeks passed, and Ramona's initial nervousness faded. She threw herself into her work, determined to prove that Miss Kinsley's faith in her had been well placed. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. She quickly gained a reputation as one of the most dedicated and talented members of the editorial team. But as Ramona's professional life flourished, her personal life grew increasingly complicated. She found herself withdrawing from her old friends and family, afraid of slipping up and revealing her secret. Dating was out of the question. How could she possibly explain her situation to a potential partner? Instead, Ramona poured all her energy into work and into perfecting her new identity. She spent her evenings researching fashion trends, practicing makeup techniques, and working on her voice. What had started as a necessary deception began to feel more and more like a genuine part of herself. 6 months into her new role, Ramona sat in Miss Kinsley's office for her performance review. The older woman smiled warmly as she looked over Ramona's file. "I have to say, Ramona, you've exceeded even my highest expectations. Your work has been exemplary, and you've integrated seamlessly into the team. How are you feeling about everything?" Ramona considered the question carefully. "Honestly, better than I expected. There are challenges, of course, but I feel like I'm finally living up to my potential, like I'm becoming the person I was always meant to be." Miss Kinsley nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I'm glad to hear that. And what about the other aspect? Do you see yourself continuing with this arrangement long-term?" The question gave Ramona pause. She'd been so focused on succeeding in her role that she hadn't given much thought to the future. The idea of going back to being Leon full-time felt strange, almost uncomfortable. I think I do," Ramona said slowly, surprising herself with the realization. "Is that odd?" Miss Kinsley shook her head. "Not at all. Gender is a complex thing, Ramona. Sometimes it takes stepping outside our usual boundaries to truly understand ourselves." As Ramona left the office that day, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. The path ahead wasn't clear, but for the first time in a long time, she felt truly excited about the future. Months turned into years, and Ramona's star continued to rise at Horizon Publishing. She was promoted to senior editor, then editorial director. Her keen eye for promising manuscripts and her ability to nurture new talent made her one of the most respected figures in the industry. But success came with its own set of challenges. As Ramona's profile grew, so did the risk of her past being exposed. She lived in constant fear that someone from her old life would recognize her, that her carefully constructed world would come crashing down. It was at an industry gala, 5 years into her tenure at Horizon, that Ramona's fears nearly became reality. She was chatting with a group of fellow editors when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Leon? Is that you?" Ramona froze, her champagne glass nearly slipping from her fingers. She turned slowly to find herself face to face with her college roommate, Michael. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ramona's mind raced, searching for a way out of this impossible situation. But as she looked into Michael's confused eyes, she made a split-second decision. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice steady. "I think you must have me confused with someone else. I'm Ramona Chen." Michael blinked, doubt creeping into his expression.
I'm sorry. You just look so much like someone I used to know. The resemblance is uncanny."
Ramona forced a laugh, praying it didn't sound as nervous as she felt.
"Well, they do say everyone has a doppelganger out there somewhere. If you'll excuse me, I need to powder my nose."
She made her escape to the ladies' room, her heart pounding. As she stared at her reflection in the mirror, touching up her lipstick with trembling hands, Ramona realized something profound. In that moment of crisis, her instinct hadn't been to confess or to run. It had been to protect this identity, this life she'd built. When she returned to the party, Michael was gone. Ramona breathed a sigh of relief, but the encounter left her shaken. That night, as she lay in bed unable to sleep, she made a decision. It was time to fully embrace who she had become. The next morning, Ramona marched into Miss Kinsley's office, determination etched on her face.
"Evelyn,"
she said, using her boss's first name for the first time.
"I need to talk to you about something important."
Miss Kinsley raised an eyebrow, gesturing for Ramona to take a seat.
"What's on your mind?"
Ramona took a deep breath.
"I want to make this permanent. Legally, I mean. I want to change my name, my gender marker, everything. I know it wasn't the original plan, but this is who I am now. Who I want to be."
To her surprise, Miss Kinsley didn't look shocked. Instead, a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "I've been wondering when you'd come to this realization, Ramona. I'll be honest, I suspected this might happen from the beginning. It's why I chose you for this unique opportunity." Ramona blinked, taken aback. You knew?" Miss Kinsley shrugged.
"Let's just say I have some experience in recognizing people who might benefit from a chance to explore their identity. I'm proud of you, Ramona. And of course, you have the full support of the company in this transition."
Tears welled up in Ramona's eyes, a mix of relief and gratitude washing over her. "Thank you, Evelyn, for everything." The process of legally transitioning was not without its challenges. Ramona had to have difficult conversations with her family, explain her situation to old friends. Some relationships were strained, others strengthened. But through it all, Ramona felt a sense of rightness, of finally being true to herself. A year later, Ramona stood at a podium accepting an award for Publisher of the Year. As she looked out over the sea of faces, colleagues, competitors, friends both old and new, she felt a profound sense of peace. "Thank you all for this honor," she began, her voice clear and confident. "When I started in this industry, I never could have imagined standing here today.
My journey has been unconventional, to say the least."
A ripple of knowing laughter passed through the crowd. Ramona's story, carefully curated to protect the details of her initial arrangement with Horizon, had become something of an inspiration in the publishing world. "But what I've learned," she continued, "is that sometimes the most unexpected paths lead us to exactly where we're meant to be, to becoming who we're meant to be." As applause filled the room, Ramona's gaze found Miss Kinsley in the audience. The older woman gave her a subtle nod, a gesture of pride and acknowledgement. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.